Hello, today we're going to be looking at the Watkins COPICAT. This one in particular, I've modified it with two switches, and in the past I've added a speed control to it. The switches are to turn off the erase head and the play head, so it turns into a tape loop player. So yeah, this one has already been through the mill, but today we're going to be modifying it a little bit more. By a little bit more, I mean quite a lot bit more. So first off, what is the Watkins COPICAT? Well, it is a tape delay. It's quite a low budget tape delay as far as tape delays go. This bit right here is basically a bit of magnetic tape. If you're not aware, it's the same stuff that you would find in a tape cassette. And if you see carefully on the bottom, if I spin it around, you'll see this bit right here. That's a little bit of tape that's sticking it together. If I turn it on, you'll notice that it's going to start spinning around and you can see that tape moving. This bit right here, this little shaft on the bottom of this is a motor. This thing right here is basically a tensioner that keeps it all in tension and tensioned on the motor. This thing is called the erase head. What this does is it erases everything that is on the tape. This thing is the write head. If you make a noise going into this machine, this will write that noise onto the tape. And then these three are read heads. These will basically read the tape. So this will write onto it, and then as it spins around, that bit of sound chunk then goes past this head, and this head will end up reading that, and then after that this ends up reading that, and this ends up reading that. And I'm gonna stop describing that now. I'm gonna start showing you. I've got my genuine Fender Mustang right here. We're gonna play a little bit of music. We'll turn it on. So right now it's not doing anything because it's completely bypassed. These buttons correlate to each of the tape heads. If we turn on this one, it'll inject the signal being read by this tape head into the audio. Now, can you hear there's a little bit of a slap back? That's the delay between this play head and this read head hearing it. If we turn this one off and play it through this one, it's going to be a long delay as the sound gets written by this, and it has to travel all the way over to here. And then through this one. Obviously, we can turn more than one on. This version of the COPICAT hasn't got a speed adjust function. I did do the mod, but it fell off, so we'll do it with our fingers right now. Another thing to note with this is we've got the feedback. What that is it basically plays the output of the actual COPICAT back into itself, much like putting a microphone on a speaker. You know how it goes beep. If we turn up the swell, it's basically a volume of the output going back into the input. You can hear that it's starting to feed back slightly. We'll turn up to max and it will reach the self-oscillation point and it will just won't stop. With all of these aspects, you end up with the classic tape delay sounds that you know and love. I was sitting and looking at this COPICAT the other day and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if it just had a handful more tape heads? And I thought that might be a fun project, adding a bunch of tape heads to this machine just to kind of get it a bit more echoey. I don't know, I don't know what the outcome is. So I was looking on the internet trying to find a bunch of tape heads, and I found out the best and cheapest way of getting tape heads, it's going to be a little bit lo-fi, was actually getting a bunch of these. Do you remember these bad boys? How these work is you plug them into the output of the MP3 player or whatever it was made, and that would end up converting it to electromagnetic signals via this tape head that's inside it. It's basically a tape play head, and that is directly connected when you plug this into the tape read head on the cassette player. What that means is this tape play head takes over the function of the tape inside the cassette, and it kind of tricks it into thinking that it's reading from a cassette tape, but really it's reading from the electromagnetic signals coming from beyond. Well, the thing is, they still make these, and amazingly enough, they're only a couple of quid. And that's more than half, even more than a quarter of buying tape heads by themselves. So I ended up making this little test setup right here. What it is basically one of the tape heads from the little converters, and that is wired into this circuit board right here, which is basically the Music Thing modular magnetophone, which is an amplifier that amplifies the signal coming from a tape head and transfers that into audible signal coming out of, you know, in this case, a jack socket. This isn't the first time I've used this circuit in a project. I used it when making the Crystal Palace sequencer. It's a crazy machine that spins around with a tape head on top of it, and it is inspired by a very old Radiophonics workshop project. But yeah, if we plug the power into the circuit and then the output of the speaker into the output of this thing, and then we turn this on. There's a lot of background noise. This is a bit janky. I do apologise. We're not receiving output from the COPICAT. We're receiving the output from this tape head right here. If we play a note, send it into oscillation mode, and then we kind of try and listen to the tape head with this. That is the guitar. That's a little janky. Well, with this circuit and a bunch of these janky tape heads, we can modify this to have more tape heads, which opens up a plethora of possibilities for this machine. I'm not 100% sure what those are going to be and how they are going to work, so I think we should just build it and figure it out. You'll notice that the driver board has multiple knobs on it. That is a plan for later on in the video. I have no idea how this is going to work out, but I think it might be quite funky. But in the meantime, I made about 20 of these because it's important for each of the reed heads to have a separate one. And we'll explain all of this as the video goes. I then measured exactly where the tape head needed to be from the panel to the tape and 3D printed these little mounts. I designed them on ONSHAPE, which is an online CAD program browser, and then 3D printed a bunch of these out. So it means we can drill them into the panel, which means the tape heads will be at the right height for whenever the tape goes past it. I then sort of realised the original COPICAT panel is not going to be big enough. We're going to have to transpose all of this onto a bigger panel. The first thing I did was drill a bunch of holes for the knobs that are on the PCBs. I found out that I could only fit 16 of these in a line, which actually works out quite well because 16 is a good musical phrase. But oh, that's 32. Oh no. Well, you get the idea. 16 is a very musical note, so 16 tape heads should give us a nice musical tape delay sequencer thing. Because I'm an optimist, I've already built a wooden case for it as well. As you can see, I made it out of the same kind of principles I usually make these things out of, which is just cut some wood and hope for the best, and then cover it with a thick slavering of wood stain. Lovely jubbly. But we're now at the point where we need to start modifying the actual COPICAT. This thing's so janky. Oh, it's a flat point screwdriver. God, what's going on with this bloody screw? Oh yeah, here we go. What have we got? What monstrosities lie within? So we need to transfer this stuff. This is going to remove the motor. Oh, look at that beauty with a nice big flywheel to keep it nice and smooth. That is lovely. So this is the panel right here. We're going to be bolting it to. This is where all the knobs are going to go. There's a few knobs here and there. I've been making it up. If these were in a straight line, the tape might sag a little bit and it might not actually touch all of them equally. However, because it's on a curve, there is slight tension on the tape from each of the tape heads. And there's a guide right here for the tape just before the motor. That's to make sure it's at exactly the right height. Then we have the motor, which is quite an extreme angle, which gives a lot of surface area on the tape around the motor shaft, and then that directly gets tensioned up by this tensioner over here. The question is, are we going to add too much friction to this with 16 tape heads reading on this for this to just work as it would here? We'll find out. If not, we'll have to add a little bit of a pinch roller or something like that. What we have to do with this is have a curve. I want to keep it as a single curve just to kind of keep it in the style of the COPICAT. Try this around the printer. Oh, I've drawn so many times I don't even know which one it is. Oh, there we go. I think I've got it. Right, so it's one of those lines, yeah? 3, 4, 5. So this is going to be the middle line for the tape head. 12. The issue I'm seeing is the tape heading upwards somewhere along this line. We don't want it to go up, so we need to figure out a way of adding some clips to the top of this to make it stop going upwards. Get some card. Precision engineering.
I then drilled all the holes for all of the tape head mounts.
We're keeping the spirit of the COPICAT, and the only way this is going to be called the Megacat is if we keep this. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually cut the top of this panel off. So we're going to mount this in and keep all of this there.
Now it was time to put it all to the test, starting to put the 3D printed tape head mounts into all of their desired positions, like so, using M3 bolts to bolt them on, and then I removed the erase head and the playhead from the COPICAT itself and plopped them in place while screwing in the motor. Then followed by putting in the pulley tensioner with the spring and such, and then I took apart all of those converters to get the tape heads and just plopped the tape heads in like so, and then we should give it a go by making a tape loop, because it's got to be custom length, because it's obviously a weird length. Here I am splicing it together with some sellotape and then plopping the tester one on, which is ironically, I still haven't changed it yet. This is the guide to stop it going over. Bolt the COPICAT to it, and then look at that. It bloody works. It's spinning around like crazy there. Oh. And it's all perfectly lined up on all the tape heads. And then I put all of the PCBs below. Each of these are designated to their own tape heads, so they're amplifiers for the tape heads. And I'll explain what the knobs do later on in the video, but you could probably get an idea. Then I use these ribbon cables to connect all of the power to all of the connectors, and then also wire the outputs together so they all get mixed together to a mixer. That's the mixer circuit. It's just 3 inverting op-amp mixers made from TL074s. If you want to know more, then please do ask. And then I soldered the wires onto the tape heads like so and started putting them in so I could test them. Here is a single tape head. Now, tape head by tape head, I just put them in and tested it. That test just then, you heard 8 tape heads, so I plopped the rest in. Here's the motor. It's extended over via these cables. We've got the dimmer switch again, the same as before, a dirty speed mod. This is the back of the COPICAT. This is where the motor used to be. Bolted here is a mains to AC voltage, which then goes to an old power supply from a synth module of mine that does plus and minus 12 volts, and then that goes over to all of the... Oh, shucks. Oh yeah, it's coming together. So I dymo labeled a bunch of it, and I also put a really long label saying copy, 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 copycat, because why not? I realised I needed some knobs that were just right for this, so I ordered them from Fonk the day before. They turned up actually this morning, so I ordered them yesterday. These are great because now we know where the knobs are pointing, because this was a challenge trying to figure out where they were all going, because there's quite a lot of them, 64 I think all in all. Anyway, and you'll notice that it's actually quite a challenge to clean this because it's all aluminium and there's lots of stuff going on. Yeah, so it's a little bit grubby, but just look past that for this video, please.
I'm going to play something that is completely dry, and basically each of these rows correlate to one of the tape heads. If I twist this knob, it's going to come out the first output, which if you have headphones on or whatever, it's going to be panned to one side. And then if I turn the other output out of this, you'll get it in the middle. But then if I turn the next one up instead, then you'll hear it's panning. The top knob is a gain, and it also makes it a little bit brighter. The third knobs down go to a third output, which actually ends up going back into itself to the sustain. So you can use one of the tape heads you're not even using to cause the feedback going into the actual machine. got a very interesting saturation. I also think that might be down to the circuit I've made for the mixer. If I AC couple the outputs of these, I might get a cleaner output, but that might be for a subsequent video because I've got a few modifications to this I want to do in the future. So as you can tell, it's sort of become a sequenced tape delay, something like a saturated analog version of a microcosm pedal or some sort of digital sequenced delay. I don't know of any kind of sequenced delay quite like this in an analog realm. Obviously there are other tape delays like Benson's and things like that, but there's none that I've seen with this many tape heads, but who knows. The sequencing aspect sounds especially interesting when you put some drums through it. And it's also nice when you put other synthesizers through it, like the Korg MS-10. But just like its original intended purpose for a guitar, well, it works pretty well on guitars as well. Also, when you use it in looper mode and you mess around with the switches that turn on and off the arrays and playheads. This video is starting to get a little bit long, so that's it for today on the COPICAT or something like that. I don't know what to call it. I haven't actually finished it with all of the modifications. Like, I want to improve the tone that's coming out of the heads, just so you can get it a little bit sharper if you want it to. Also, there's a connector on the circuit boards that are made to have separate outputs for each of the tape heads. That means if you wanted to, you could plug all 16 outputs into something like a 16 channel mixer with a bunch of sends and stuff, and you can send all of the outputs into loads of different setups. For instance, you could possibly send every single one to its own speaker, or you could send it to a quadraphonic speaker setup, or some of it going to a distortion, some of it going to a reverb, this, that and the other. I'm pretty damn pleased with how this thing's come out. It doesn't sound like a copycat, and it doesn't sound like another sort of analog delay. Yes, it may be a limited trick pony, but for what it does, I think it's pretty cool. If you want to see more videos of me talking about this whilst I was building it, well, it's available over on Patreon, as I've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks whilst I've been bashing it together. There's also the full videos of me trying out the different instruments going into this over on Patreon as well, with audio that you can chop up and use to your heart's content. For instance, the drums, there's loads of interesting drum loops in there. And you can download all of that amongst loads of other things over on Patreon, and then at the same time making things like making this and the video on this possible. I'm going to figure out a way of setting this up over at This Museum's Not Obsolete, so if you want to see this in real life, come along to This Museum's Not Obsolete. Anyway, I'm Luke Mum No Computer, this is the Copycat, and yeah, if you like what we said, subscribe and don't forget to try it.